Beautiful work, Mike. I mean, just take a look at this. So Mike's been working on this for his friend, I believe. In fact, jump over to the forum area real quick and just see what Mike has to say. So Mike says, this is an illustration that is a gift for a friend. I'd like some advice on handling something this complex with 4 characters fighting in battle with each other. I need help with the posing. And with anything else that can make this easier, please find included the thumbnails and the 4 characters in this. It features a character from Shield Hero and 2 original characters that are my friends. Any help is appreciated. Awesome stuff. Let's take a look then. Yeah, these superhero shots where you're looking at multiple characters in one scene can be really difficult to actually compose and to have those characters represented in a way that really, leaves a striking impression on the audience. So I think that what you've got here so far is quite good. It's just that we can push it even further, Mike. We've got Nofumi. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, who's defending against Motoi Yasu, while Sark attacks from behind, and Batoru is coming up behind to attack Sark in turn. Fighters on opposite sides in the foreground and the background. Team A is visually boxed in by Team B. So in the next one, Team A and B are visually on opposite sides. Cool. Let's take a look at this. When we look at the dimensions that you're working with, do you have to stick with those dimensions? It's almost a square that we're looking at there. So that's just something to consider. It's not a bad thing at all. But what we're looking for here is the figure ruler first up. And I'm just going to draw out something that resembles the dimensions that you've gone with thus far. Okay, and we're going to stick with that just because that's what you've chosen for this piece. And I've got my legendary line art brush there, ready to rock and roll. Get that drawn in. Delete that ruler. Okay, now I'm going to be working from a bit of a distance here just because when it comes to drawing anything, I like to make sure that I've got a wholesome overview of exactly what's happening. And you've got the 4 characters. So here's how this is going to work. Let's say that we got the guy in the front here with the shield, right? What we want to do for him is actually blow him up, okay? We want to make him bigger. And we've also got to try to keep in mind the thirds that we're breaking the scene up into. Okay, now usually that's going to look a little bit like this. Right, now pretend these are equal thirds. Obviously, I'm not very good at splitting it up equally, but this is what I'm visualizing over the top of this frame as I'm working. And the idea is that, for example, you want maybe a character here. You could have another character in the background. Maybe another character over here coming in from behind. You could have a character on this line. And this just generally leads to a better composition when you can place the characters within your scene into these thirds in some way. Now, you might have a character that's taking up this whole third over here, right? So you can see how you can use the actual space created by the thirds, but you can also use the third intersections as well as a way to get everything aligned, and as well as the divisions. You can set them up on those divisions. And you could have a character here, and you'll notice how he fits, or she fits within that particular set of 2 cells. There's a number of different ways you can use those thirds. So that's what I'm visualizing in my mind as I work here. Now I'm taking them away because I do want to try not to get too caught up with them. I don't want them to be a distraction in a sense. I just want to kind of vaguely think about them in the background as I'm working here. And so we might have this, character here, Noafumi. And I'm going to say that their head will be here in the foreground. Right, and I'm going to loosely sketch this up. Bend them down. Now I don't know who the main focus character here is going to be. If you don't have one in mind, if there isn't a particular character that you want to focus in on, just choose any. Okay, and we'll loosely sketch that up. I'll plot out where I want this other character over here. So that one's going to come up over there. And maybe we'll have the spear here. The arm, forearm. And then the spear is coming for them. And maybe that spear is coming across over the back of this guy into the foreground there. Now, we're going to rejig things, of course, and try to ensure that it's all coming together, fitting together right. And that's always going to require some tweaking. So everything you see here is definitely apt to change, like it completely redone, restructured. And then we've got some other characters in the background as well. And keep in mind, this is the first thing I've drawn today, so I'm likely going to need some time to warm up, which is totally fine. All right, so that's one sort of idea that I realized probably wasn't going to work out as much. I'm going to try something else now. Maybe just loosely drawing these characters up. So right now what you're seeing is that I'm kind of experimenting with my different options. Okay, so I'm going to have a character here. And this one might be holding an axe. Or maybe we might bring their arm around like this. That could be the axe there. All right. And then we might have another character here. Some of them can be cropped out. They don't all need to be fitting on the screen necessarily. Okay, we could have one here. Maybe they could be looking up at this character. And what I'm drawing might look a little bit vague at the moment, but don't worry, I'll make sure that I go over the top of it once I'm happy with how everything's looking. It starts out a little bit abstract though, because, well, you want to think of it like getting clay down onto the page, just balls of clay that you can sculpt out. And it's really just about finding the placement of everything. Trying to figure out where these characters are going to go before you even start to develop them. Okay, and so this is maybe going to be the one with the shield potentially. And I'm going to have this arm coming around actually holding that shield. Okay, and that may mean that we need to take this character back. Shrink them down a little bit. I don't want to shrink them down too much because what I'm trying to create here is a bit of size variation. All right, and then there's another character off in the background there. And this one we're going to do really small. Maybe this character is actually going to be... Let me see here. You can have this arm coming around, axe, hand holding it up. Foot's pushed back. All right. Ultimately, what I'm really trying to get across to you here, Mike, is we want to create more scale between the characters. And I know that you've done that, and you've done a great job on it. But what I think will be a wonderful thing to do is actually push it even further. The more you can push it, the more contrast you're going to create between these characters. So then we're going to have another character. So this will be part of Team B, I guess. And maybe they're going to be leaping up from behind. I didn't quite like that, so we're going to have another crack at it. I'm going to make a selection around that and shrink it down. Maybe adjust it with the transform tool. It's a bit of a process to go through for sure. We'll have maybe this leg coming up and then back. The other leg coming down here somewhere. So he's actually leaping up from behind the character in front. And let's see here. I'm going to, I'm not sure what weapon this guy has, but I'm going to assume it's the spear. So I'm going to try maybe pulling that spear across here. So we're going to foreshorten it a bit. Along with his arm as he's holding it. So it's a bit of a collage in the beginning. Process of mixing and matching different things that might potentially work. This is the other hand that's going to be kind of steadying the spear rather. And this is the head of the guy. Okay, and with that done, we'll go back down with these guys and we'll see if we can transform and fit them into the space we've got here a little bit better. Now, if we can create some overlap with this spear, that'd be really great. In other words, we're going to have this guy's leg maybe coming down behind the spear. Like so. And if we can incorporate more foreshortening in, anywhere we can do that, that'll be awesome too. All right, and this guy, well, he's going to be able to fit down here probably quite comfortably, I would say. I'm not really going to resize him up too much more. And look, if his leg is going off the page, so be it. You know, you don't want everything neatly framed, especially in more of an action sequence like this. Okay, and I'm thinking this guy probably could be pulled over to the left a little bit more. So over here. Can resize his axe. We could foreshorten it, essentially, in order to get it to fit in where we want. And then we're going to jump back over to these guys. We might decide, all right, well, I like where it's going, but maybe this dude needs to come down a little bit more. We, of course, don't want things to feel too crowded here. So let's create a little bit of separation between these. Shrink it down a tad more. And hey, if you feel like you need a little bit more room to breathe, you want to fit more of the background in there, then by all means, go with what you've done, because I do think that it works pretty well. This is just an alternative that could be explored, and I'm not saying it's perfect. Okay. So now that that's done, we can get in there and basically start to rough out some more of the anatomy. All right, so this is the underside of this guy's pelvis. Get that in there. I'm going to zoom in now. That's what you can do once you've got everything working the way that you want, is you can start zooming in and actually knock out some of the details. We'll merge all of these down and I'll drop the opacity, not that much. Okay. And now we'll do a really quick draw over, because I know you're looking at this probably and you're like, man, that's like way too messy. I can't even tell what's going on there. And I'm not going to be looking too much at the references, the character references. Like, I'll try to capture their basic physique, but you can fill in the details somewhat, of course, once you're happy with the posing and the positioning of the characters. But for example here, this arm, I'm noticing, hey, you know what? I could totally go ahead and foreshorten that some more. Like, I could really bring that hand out. And that's the thing. Always look for an opportunity to emphasize the 3D-ness within your work, like to really pump it up to get that depth happening. Because the more you can do that, especially in an action sequence like this, the more that you're going to find, hey, this is really eye-popping. This is really making it feel like this fight's about to break out of the page. Now, all the while, you're going to want to push the poses of your characters as well, as much as possible. So if we're looking at the back of his body here, well, I'm thinking, hey, you know what? Let's actually have this leg pulled out a little bit more over in this direction. Okay, now this would be the side of his body there. This would be the back. And so we'd be looking at the ribs probably from this angle. Now, of course, this requires you to know a decent amount of anatomy and proportions and that kind of thing. You know, this is why a lot of the time foreshortening to this extent is going to be avoided because it's hard. You know, it's really hard to pull it off right. But it's exactly why it's worth learning, because you can, if you think of it as a tool, it allows you to be able to create something much more dynamic and enthralling to look at. Okay, and so then you've got the face of the character. And you can see that as I redraw out this more refined representation, I'm going ahead and I'm adjusting it. You know, I'm repositioning the head a little bit to give him, you know, whatever hairstyle you want, really. And then we've got the arm. Now, remember what I was talking about, foreshortening this stuff wherever you can see the opportunity. So let's go ahead here and actually do that, right? Like this could be the arm that's coming up from this side of the body. Let's scale up that fist. Make it more three-dimensional, just like the other one. And then what we're left with is this shield that looks like it's, well, it's actually coming towards us from this angle. Okay. You can see there that pose alone starts to look, you know, really three-dimensional. And what I'll do is I'll knock out the anatomy a little bit more and the refinement for this character to the right. And you can sort of apply what we're going over there to these other characters in the backdrop, as opposed to me just going over every single one here. Then you got this guy, and he's got a bit of a twist to his body, you can see there. So what we're going to do with that is just maybe add in the pec here. We'll say that that's the pec. And his entire body is really going to be foreshortened here. So we'll add in the abs. Whenever I'm giving a critique like this, I don't want you to think of it as me being critical necessarily of the work you have done. You know, I'm not necessarily correcting something that's wrong there. What I'm doing is showing you more of another option, an alternative that might work even better for the idea that you're going after. Okay, so this is his leg here, and I know you're drawing anime characters, so they might not be as buff as what I'm drawing this guy here, but like I said, you can always go ahead and actually adjust the anatomy and the body type to your own preferences. And then what I would suggest here with this foot is actually have it curving around to the back, continuing that gesture. Then we got this leg, which is going to come down here. So these characters are partially cut off of the page. And guess what? That's okay. I mean, cropping your characters, cropping your image is sometimes going to have as much strategy to it as anything else that you might consider as an artist. You know, framing things up. And so what we have here is this sort of nice division in the page, really, where we see these close-up characters who are being attacked by these guys over here. And we have the forearm just coming up and around. Oh, I got a bit crazy on the reshaping there of his forearm, so I'll actually readjust that just a tiny bit. And you can see there's going to be a decent amount of foreshortening happening on his fist in this instance, so I'll get that drawn in there. Knock in some fingers. And hey, you know, that forearm is actually kind of long, so we could create a even more foreshortened representation of it by adjusting its length. Kind of want it so that it's being pointed away from us in the direction of these guys that are coming toward them. And hey, why don't we maneuver his other hand over here? So it's holding up the other end of the sphere. Sorry, not the sphere, the dang spear. I'm so used to saying sphere during these drawing demonstrations that I keep converting the word spear into sphere. Okay, there we go. And I'm looking at those pecs. I'm thinking, you know what? They could probably be pulled up a little bit higher to give some extra length to the torso, the lower torso. Get more ab action happening in there. And so then this guy's head is going to be presented more like that. Okay, we'd have his eyes, and let's see, we'll give him one of the hairdos on the characters that you've got there, something like this. And there we have it. Okay, and then you've got this character and this character in the backdrop, and there's a clear hierarchy of foreground, middle ground, and then far background happening. And what I would suggest is when you're putting the background in there, that just like you've got in your thumbnails, you give it a tilted perspective. Okay, something like that. Well, I hope that makes sense, Mike, and that you found that helpful. You might be like, well, Clayton, you just basically threw out everything I drew there and redrew it yourself. And, well, of course, you could go for something more like what I've shown here, or you could stick with what you've got, because what you've got works fine. If I was to critique this specifically, I would just take this guy here and move him up a little bit just so that he's not so close to the bottom of the page there. But in general, you got some really nice expressive poses for your characters. And one thing that I would suggest for them is to really try to get that depth happening within your scene if you can, just to create more of a sense of action within it and additional amount of depth, really pull that audience in. But it's certainly not something that is ever a necessity. If you're looking for a way to pump up the impact, that's one way to do it. But great job all in all. I can't wait to see how it turns out in the end, Mike.